ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hello, welcome back to Triana ASEAN. You're with Grace at ASEAN Dailies, where we'll deliver news from Southeast Asia. Now, let's talk about all those incidents that's been happening and that's been stirring all over the weekend. Just a recent incident that happened in the Loyat Plaza. And especially on social media, lots of comments and also mixed feedback have been pouring on the social media as well as other forms of platforms. And then people have been expressed regarding these issues and it's showing that Malaysia is undeniably divided into according to the races here. So apparently the man accused of stealing mobile phone in Loyat Plaza, it was an act which sparked an arrest over the weekend, of course, and it has claimed the trial at the Kuala Lumpur court. And it was a Shahrul Anwar Abdulaziz, who was just 22. He was accused of committing the crime at the mall, which is all those specializes in electronic goods. And of course, he was charged under section 380 of the Penal Code for theft, which carries the maximum jail terms of 7 years. But then what's happening is, because of this, the defense attorney Shaharuddin Ali sought a lower bail on the grounds that the Shahrul Anwar was unemployed and was taking care of his hearing impaired parents. And also he had initially pleaded guilty when the charge was read out, and much to his lawyer's surprise. The accused guilty plea is a surprise to me. However, I had advised him otherwise. But apparently it appeared that Shahrul Anwar did not fully understand what was being asked, and also he's changed his plea to not guilty after all this happened at the incident on July 11th. And a lot of sort of physical fight and attacks happened on that day. And when it comes to this incident, until now, a lot of mixed feedbacks are there on the social media. So, Gowri, when it comes to this incident, it could have just ended quite simply, but then now it has sort of, I would say, exaggerated, and then people are just like outraging over the racist issue now.
I think so. I agree with you. I think it's definitely a case of a thief, which could be handled by the police. But this guy who stole the handphone, of course, brought back his friends and turned it into something else. It was just a simple incident of a phone theft, but it was blown out of proportion and taken out of context. And this was used as a platform even to bring out all the other racial sentiments and to use that to their advantage and to get people to get down. And yes, it could have been avoided if he had not stolen the phone in the first place. But I think it's beyond that. When we look at this, it's not really about what skin color you are or what race you are when we talk about this incident particularly that happened at Loyat. I think there's been a lot of people posting on Facebook saying this has nothing to do with race,
right.
But there's also a significant amount of people who said this is about race, deal with it. But I think for me it will be definitely nothing to do with racism, although it was used later in the later stage of this incident, and it should just be what it is. The guy who stole the phone should be charged and given his punishment.
Exactly. It could have been just simple as that. But then after the friends came over and they attacked the site, and it just all those physical acts has gotten worse. And it is sort of very embarrassing when it comes to Malaysian news again. Although this news, it has not spread worldwide. However, it is still very very embarrassing within the nation itself.
I think so. I mean, it's all over a cell phone and I don't think there's any other country even that will have
Exactly.
a major riot that came because of a stolen cell phone.
And it also looks like a lot of people have been sort of piling all those issues and their unhappiness when it comes to races in Malaysia. There's on social media they were like just outraging and a lot of mixed feedback. Like it's nothing to do with race, but then, on the other part there are also a group of people saying that it is something to do with race. Come on, so. It's very mixed feedback on the social media, and also this incident, it doesn't just stop here. It even goes to the government level. Now, why are we doing this? It's all because of the government, and again, the complaint comes again from the government. But then let's move on to the perhaps sort of the same issue, but it still stays in Malaysia, which is regarding the 1MDB.
Right, and of course we have our daily 1MDB update, which was forgotten the last couple of days because of the Lawyat incident. But there has been a little update, and yesterday actually the task force that they set up to carry out the investigation said that they found no foul play and no wrongdoing in the final report
Right.
of the 1MDB investigation.
And it is very quite obvious, even after all this Auditor-General's released all the statement, and even the finance of minister of released the statement. To people, they already know, and they really hope that what's the truth, and it's nothing. I mean, they said it's nothing to do with all those Najib's private account, and even Rosman's private account. But then the question is, then where is the money?
Right.
Where did the money go?
I think there's two issues here. One is, of course, like you mentioned, we don't know for sure, of course, as much as as we can talk about it on social media. We are basing our accusations or allegations based on some media, the reports that has been leaked, documents that has been leaked, news information that has been surfacing. But of course, that's still not 100% sure because our Prime Minister has still been denying this, and we would like to give him the benefit of a doubt. But at the same time, to say that no evidence of wrongdoing was found at all, that's kind of crossing the line as well, because we do know that something fishy is going on.
Yep.
And well, if it was not the Prime Minister, then find out who did it. And
Exactly.
don't just come out and say we found no wrongdoing, no foul play, nothing, everything's fine, because that much we do know, that not everything is fine when it comes to
Yeah.
1MDB. And of course, everyone knows the figure 42 billion going missing, not a small thing, definitely a big deal. That's almost US. They transferred US 700 million to certain individual, but they haven't found who exactly that individual
Exactly.
is. So I think another issue here is the transparency or the credibility of the task force that was set up to carry out this investigation. Are they actually independent from the government, and maybe they should carry out their probe again?
Exactly, and this is very sort of very shameful to Malaysia again, because it was released, it was announced from Wall Street Journal first, and then now a few countries outside of Malaysia for sure, they are aware of what's happening in Malaysia, and it's just saying that. By just saying that, we come clean and that there's nothing to do with us, really doesn't solve anything. I mean, something has to come from the government. At least a bit of transparency to the public will help, or even to earn the respect from the public.
And of course, they also said that all baseless allegations will be put to rest. And there's also some talk about starting to ban social media and all, of course. But at the end of it all, the end goal here is to find out who was responsible, because the money is still missing. It's just because they said there's no wrongdoing, it doesn't change the situation that has already happened. So hopefully they do continue probing and find out the person responsible for it.
Right. So that's the end of our just the first session of ASEAN Dailies. We'll be back after this short break.
ASEAN Dailies, First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to Driana ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing, and you're with Grace.
And this is Gowri. You are with us on our ASEAN Daily, where we bring you news from all over Southeast Asia from Monday to Friday.
That's correct. So let's stay in our political aspect of Southeast Asia here, and we can talk about Indonesia. Apparently, the nation has 50 million in poverty, but 44 million they do enjoy electricity subsidies, apparently. And we do know that throughout the Southeast Asia region, Indonesia has one of the largest populations, and of course, we can't ignore the poverty level in the nation also. But Indonesian Vice President Yusuf Kala, he met the director of state electricity firm, and he to discuss concern that all these electricity subsidies have not achieved their objectives apparently.
Right, and I think the issue here is that, like you mentioned, there are 15 million people in poverty, but 44 million enjoying the subsidies, and that's not quite balanced out.
Yep.
And the concern here is that if electricity subsidies are being given out, then they should be given directly to the poor through certain programs that have been launched by the government or through other means. And going forward, they actually want to give subsidies directly to the poor because that is the objective of the government, which is why they feel like, why are these other the remaining of the 44 million actually enjoying the subsidy when they are actually not in the poverty line? And this is not good, according to the Director of State. And he also said that it does not educate the community, really.
For sure, and then there needs to recalculate and reconsider first whether the idea can be implemented, the idea of helping by giving the electricity subsidies to low-income families or whole community in general, because we mentioned that there are a lot of a high population when it comes to poverty, and those people who are the one who is in need of having all these electric subsidies. Not only that, different forms of government support. So beginning of this next year, electricity subsidies will not go through this PLN directly, but automatically be given to all those low-income earners.
Right, and usually when it comes to the case of subsidies, it is for the people who are poor or who are earning below what was supposed to be the minimum wage for them. And in this case as well, it doesn't exactly say what is the indication for the 15 million who are in poverty. Probably the other remaining 44 million are not that well off either, and close to, the poverty line, but it doesn't mention.
Exactly.
But I think the best thing here is to strike a balance between who receives subsidies and who doesn't. And if it is the government's plan to give it directly to the poor, then they should come up with a different way to do it. Like you were saying, that they don't go through the PLN anymore.
Yes.
And straight away just channel all the subsidies to the poor, the ones who really need it.
So the government really needs to perhaps just look into the policy and perhaps the channels where all this money really go to again and again. Well, let's go to Vietnam, and also perhaps the relationship between Vietnam and China, and this is regarding the corruption. And apparently when you talk about the corruption in Southeast Asia, apparently it's all over. And then it's sad to say and sad to accept this fact, but apparently Vietnam will coordinate closely with China to fight this corruption. And the relationship with Vietnam and China has been sour for the past, a few years already. But to fight this corruption, I guess it is a sort of positive news. But however, the vice president apparently valued the outcomes of the talks between Chinese delegations and also Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committees for inspection and also government inspectorate as well.
Yes, and the vice president also spoke quite highly of China's recent socio-economic achievements, and she also said that the country would fulfill its integration and development goals, and that's one of the reasons why Vietnam will be working closely with China. And you're right, corruption is a problem that is all over Southeast Asia. I think it's quite difficult for us to run away from it, whether it's Malaysia or Thailand, or especially in Indonesia or Philippines, whichever country it is. We have yet to come up with an effective way to actually combat corruption, although there has been some NGOs or little organizations fighting for this cause. And I think the important thing about this is Vietnam working with a country that's outside Southeast Asia and trying to bring in something different, working with China. China definitely has a different way of doing things compared to the other countries in Southeast Asia. And of course, this collaboration will benefit both sides. And they've also launched certain inspections in terms of public interest, healthcare, education, labor, social affairs, environment, among other things. And they will also start inspecting closely on the accountability and law-abiding practices. And I think this is another important thing that we should take into account, because we do have actually laws against corruption, but it's always when it comes to implementing it that no one is really following through with the whole process.
Exactly. So as much as there are lots of areas that between China and Vietnam have been addressed, all those issues and also how they can come about. So plans will be there, but then like you mentioned, the execution is another story. But then the relationship between Vietnam and China, hopefully it gets better by working together to fight against the corruption. Well, let's go to Indonesia again. The President Jokowi, he mulls the pardon for the former KPK chairman. His name is Antasari.
That's right, and this Antasari is actually sentenced for 18 years because he was the mastermind behind the killing of a businessman in May 2009. And the president is trying to release Antasari on health and humanitarian grounds. Apparently, he's not been doing so well in terms of health, and he also wants to resolve several legal problems that he has for Antasari's eligibility to appeal for clemency from the president. But the Law and Human Rights Minister said that the deterioration in his health probably is better for him to, although he's being treated at the hospital at the moment, it probably will be wise to actually grant him the pardon that he needs. But it's a very complicated issue. It's great that the president wants to grant mercy or clemency to somebody who is in prison, but at the same time, they have to make sure that when he's released, he really knows what he's guilty of, and that he wouldn't repeat the same thing.
Right. And like you said, the problem here is the head of state should not break the law, and they're also given their input, and it is up to president to make his decision apparently. So what happened was, in January 2010, like you mentioned, in the South Jakarta district, they found that Antasari guilty of the murdering of this person, and then but then it is like you said, it's also very complicated because of his health. And Antasari has repeatedly proclaimed his innocent, and also he has taken all those available legal steps to challenge the verdict as well. But then later he agreed to ask for the clemency from the president.
Right,
so that's another story. Yeah.
Sorry, but there's also another suspicion that Antasari was actually set up, as in he didn't really commit the murder, that it was all a sabotage against him, which is why he pled not guilty. And he also launched his own investigation into the alleged corruption that happened with an IT project at the General Elections Commission. And it seems his most ambitious action was when he declared that he would take control of the 6.7 billion bailout of Bank Century during the 2008 economic crisis. That's right. There's a lot of money involved. And I think it goes back to our previous topic about corruption as well. I think when it comes to money, for some reason, it's always it compromises the human value fairly quickly, and they tend to give in to this, and which is why Antasari was put in jail, apart from the murder that he was associated with. And another challenge for Jokowi is also to figure out how to combat corruption in his own country, because he's also trying to reshuffle his cabinet, if I'm not mistaken, trying to get more accountable, transparent, reliable ministers to serve the country.
That's the very tricky part, because when it comes to running a country, it's not so easy, and having the accountability as well as the credibility to find someone who can work with it for long term, that's also very, very sort of very difficult decisions to make. Well, we'll take another short break. When we return, we'll deliver news as well as discuss news on economic and business side of Southeast Asia.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to 3 ASEAN. You're with Grace.
Hello, this is Gowri, and you're listening to us on our ASEAN Daily for this Wednesday morning.
Exactly. And then we will still here at ASEAN Daily, so we will, at this time, we will focus on the economic side of Southeast Asia. So apparently Singapore, they may slip into recession, and that the economic growth in Singapore has been quite unstable for the past weeks. And then it is quite a surprise economic contraction for Singapore in the second quarter, and it is. They also saw the trade-reliant economics currency crumble to 1 month 1 month, and also with at least one analyst warning that the grim data raised the risk of technical recession as well.
Right, and this is a very surprising news, because Singapore has always been one of the strongest country in Southeast Asia, especially in terms of economic strength. The other countries actually have a lot to learn from Singapore and how they run things over there. So for us to see a news about Singapore risk going into a recession is definitely shocking, and it's quite unbelievable as well. But it seems that the sluggish global demand actually has been quite a factor for one thing in terms of why Singapore will be going into recession, and another thing is in terms of government restriction on foreign labor, which also sort of affected the manufacturing sector in Singapore. And another thing is of also raising the prospect of further monetary easing later this year. So it seems that foreign labor does actually play quite an important part in a country's economy. It's even like a country like Singapore, just because they started restricting foreign labor, it actually affected the whole manufacturing industry in the country.
That is very true. And even though Singapore dollar is still strong, but it slumped to about the 1 month low of to 1.3622 versus the US dollar soon after the August GBT report, and also it was the lowest level since June 8th. And the second quarter slump was in the sharp contrast to the revised 4.2% expansion clocked in the first quarter, and also 0.8% growth picked on the Reuters poll as well. So even though Singapore still stands the one of the strongest, I would say, economic status in Southeast Asia, but it also looks like Singapore is heading to have a sort of instability, and when it comes to economic, and this is pretty worrisome, because one country with a strong image is sort of having its own recession. It doesn't really give a good news to the other neighboring countries.
That's right. I mean, if Singapore cannot do it, how are we gonna do it? Just kidding. But yeah, Singapore's dollar as well slumped to a 1 month low. You were mentioning about that earlier, and it was as low as 1.3 versus the US dollar soon after the GDP report, which was actually the lowest level since the 8th of June. And like I was saying as well, the Singapore's manufacturing factor that took a downturn, especially in the biomedical and transport engineering clusters. And speaking of global demand, which was actually led by a slowdown in China. So China actually also plays a quite important role in terms of demand when it comes to countries around Southeast Asia. And also a years-long policy restricting foreign workers have also hurt private investment and business expansion in Singapore. And it seems that the labor crunch is the one that's really hurting the companies and hurting their ability to grow and their ability to take on new orders and new projects as well. And another reason or another implication is the obvious risk from the Greece debt crisis, which affected the growth in China, and that in turn is affecting Singapore. It's interesting how this whole thing works, sort of like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Here.
And it's interesting that you mentioned about the Greek crisis. Apparently, this issue not only it's concerning in an EU country, but then it to Southeast Asia, like you mentioned, and the euro and the EU's economic and the political problems are pretty difficult enough to understand the when clearly and correctly it should be explained. And also, we as an ASEAN, we also need to learn from this euro crisis, because when it comes to even Malaysia, the ringgit value, and we just talk about the Singapore dollar value. We also having our own economical sort of difficulties when it comes to Southeast Asia. But talking about the Greek crisis, and now, well, no matter after the referendum and there's a voting system, Greek is given another chance in the eurozone and to be not to completely sort of sacked out from that community. And even this comes with a lot of mixed feedback to the nation itself, to Greece, because people are just barely living on the very limited budget daily, and then now Greece is given another chance. But what can we learn as ASEAN from this old euro crisis, or precisely Greek crisis, is another homework for us.
Mm-hmm. And according to this report as well, it seems that the main reason for what happened in Greece is the kind of measures that they took over the last 5 years when they experienced financial difficulty. What they did was they cut their pension, they cut salaries, they cut healthcare costs, and they also lay off a lot of government workers. And because of this, the entire GDP of the whole country dropped by 25%.
Wow.
And this is one of the reasons why the whole thing became even worse.
Exactly.
I mean, the moment you cut salary, people have lesser money to spend, and if people don't spend, it's not going to help the economy of the country. And
Exactly.
it's already right there. You can see something negative that's coming your way. And besides that, there's also a consensus among most economists that the Greek drama, they call it, demonstrated better than anything else that the Eurozone is really not an optimal currency area. Not just because of the labor mobility between the countries, but it's also something that is quite difficult to be established. And so, like you were saying, what can ASEAN learn from this? And, well, according to John William Blanket, who wrote this article, he said that we are actually on the right track and we should just continue doing what we're doing, because we do not actually have a single currency like what they practice in the EU.
We want to achieve single currency at the end of it, but it is very complicated.
Right.
Well, even for EU, they have achieved to have this single currency after long discussions and years of like having meetings, and they come to the agreement. So, I guess here ASEAN, we, according to him also, we shouldn't worry too much. Perhaps ASEAN should just continue on its quiet course that we've been doing.
That's right. And also, of course, we have our very famous AEC, the ASEAN Single Market, which is due to be completed on the 31st December this year at midnight. Will not exactly be half as single as the EU's incomplete internal market today. But still, he said ASEAN shouldn't worry because based on his 5 years that he spent in Indonesia and also 20 years in EU, so he has a clear picture of both things, and he always felt that ASEAN actually was a lot more inspiring and a lot more willing to explore trials in uncharted waters. And because of that, he said ASEAN should wait at least 50 years before we even start considering the possibility of having a single currency. But as a whole an entirely different topic altogether
Yeah,
on the benefits,
exactly.
on what good can come out of having a single currency in the region.
So we'll take another short break. When we return, we'll deliver news on the social cultural aspect of Southeast Asia. So stay tuned.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back to 3 and ASEAN. You're still with Grace.
And this is Gowri.
And we are at the ASEAN Daily News, where we deliver news from Southeast Asia. So let's talk about something more fun and quite exciting. And apparently in Myanmar, they have punk group and they have been helping their own country's homeless people. And this has been the news has been spreading on social media apparently.
That's right, and it's also because it became big mostly because it's a group of punks, and of course they have this whole perception about having tattoos, colored hair, piercings all over. But that's the thing, right? Why should their appearance on the outside judge who they are on the inside? Because whether you have piercing or not, you have tattoo or not, if you feel like helping someone, you just help someone. Your tattoo doesn't actually make the decision for you. And they have been distributing food to people living in the streets. And on the evening that Vice attended, that this news company, they actually had about 30 punks and hangers-on to gather to help combat Yangon's rising homelessness crisis. And also, given the big turnout, they actually split into two different groups before making their way around the city to hand out meals of fried rice, bananas, and bottled water. And the meals, which was actually cooked by those punks themselves and financed by donations.
And this is very positive move coming from the punk group. And this project is the Burmese chapter of the Food Not Bombs. And it's been running for about 3 years. And it's led by the members of a local punk band called the Rebel Riot. And it's a worldwide Food Not Bombs movement involves the volunteers providing vegetarian meals to people. And also it was established in the States in the 1980s, and it has the sort of an anti-poverty and it's non-violent ethos there. So it is quite ethical. And one of them, they also said, I realized I had to do something rather than just sing about changing the system. And also he was a singer and a guitarist, and he believes that all this current government has no understanding of the plight of the city homeless, whose numbers are actually growing. The population is just growing. Like we also mentioned in the Indonesia, the poverty level is just growing because of the population as well.
That's right.
And they have the same in the Myanmar.
And another thing that's happening in Myanmar is the increase in housing prices, and that also caused the rents to actually get really, really high. And because of that, not everyone can afford renting a house or forget even about buying a house in the first place. And some are even forced out of the house because they couldn't afford to pay the rising rent. And some of them, of course, are provided shelter by Buddhist monasteries, but others actually have to just move out to smaller towns or just live by the streets. And this number of cases has been rising a lot. And this group of punks actually help up to 100 people a night during their evening's food distribution walk.
And also they have, this whole group have a little hope for coming this November general elections. And it's not that all just because they're all from the certain group doesn't mean that they don't care about their country. It's just the little tiny things that they have been giving out and helping to these people. It means something. And then with the November general election, they're also keeping a lot of attention to this election, hoping that all the parties are controlled by the certain government, but eventually they hope to have a transition period from military to democratic system, but hopefully it's smooth enough.
And hopefully other countries can also take the cue from what this group of punks are doing in Myanmar. And if there is a rising problem in your country, just get on there and help people and don't just wait for help to come to you.
Yes. And then let's go to Singapore, where you will see a lot of beautiful paintings, and Singapore's bustling Raffles Quay, the Sleeping Fish Village in Bali, and also Urban Street Corner in Osaka. I mean, those are the scenes the Malaysian painter, whose name was Chankerk, picked to deliver this contemporary representation of Asia.
And with his signature style, which is what they call a quick, disjointed brushstrokes and inclined planes, he has been revealing Asia's underlying transition and uncertainty, as well as through the skyscrapers and luxury hotels that crowd the traditional markets and communities. And it seems that his work also reflects the tension that exists between the past and the present Singapore. As well, he also emphasizes a lot on Chinese shop houses, which are disappearing because of the development that's been happening. A lot of high-rise building. So all these little Chinese shop houses are being transformed, not only into tall buildings but also fancy bars and restaurants. And he's trying to capture that lost feeling.
That's amazing, and I hope that we can, I mean, as Southeast Asians, we can appreciate all these arts and paintings, and then be able to support the work as well.
And apart from Singapore, another city that he's also interested in depicting is actually Osaka, because
nice.
like Singapore, Osaka is also supposedly a Japanese style building, very old, very colonial, but it's also become so modernized with a lot of skyscrapers, and he wants to also preserve that essence of the Japanese style building, as well as in Bali, where he's trying to inject elements of temple, fishing village, and traditional market. And the question here is, how long can these places remain the same? Because we are pursuing development every day, going for this whole modern feel, high-rise buildings, tall towers, fancy bars and restaurants. So with all these little things like fishing village, a traditional market, or just Chinese shop houses, how long can this actually last, and will people remember this 10 years from now?
Yeah, well, that's when we have all this ASEAN heritage to reserve and also to maintain all certain buildings in our region. However, painting also could be one of the things that we can remember how the places look like before and now.
And you just started painting as well, Grace.
Yes, I just did. It's not that up to this level, apparently, just the beginner's level, but it's just my hobby.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it for our ASEAN Daily News. But stay tuned for the next session, where we just have a discussion on our Malaysian the incident that had just happened over the weekend.
Right, and don't forget to tune in to us on our website at www.durianasean.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the daily podcasts on interviews and news commentaries.
And don't forget to download. We have our own app now,
That's
Durian
right.
ASEAN on Android. So listen to us via Android when you're on the go, or when you really don't have any internet access. With a simple just mobile phone, you can access to our apps and listen to our podcast as well.